But, in looking at this, I went online and looked at some of the multiples that you speak about. We saw Eli Lilly trading at 8 times earnings and GlaxoSmithKline trading at 10 times earnings. And then I look across the spectrum at these diversified companies you speak about, Shire out of the UK, or Teva Pharmaceuticals out of, I think, Israel. And we see them trading at 20 times earnings. And we know traditionally they don't have the big exclusivity and the patent protections. So the market seems to be rewarding these generic lower price markets. Is that fair to say?
The generics are getting a better forward multiple because there's a sense that as the genericization of the market grows, these companies are going to grow with that whole opportunity. And also healthcare reform is going to increase the number of people who will have access in the U.S. to medicines, and the generic companies will certainly benefit from that.
Sure.
Our hope also is that the innovation-based sector will also benefit from that, but it's important then to work on these hurdles that I just mentioned.
Sure. And so we talked about the patent cliff. We talked about how it's reflected in the share price through these price to earnings multiples. And but there's good news, I'm sure, that you could speak about. And the good news is, there's ways, I guess, to scale the cliff.
There are.
So maybe just give us some of your insights at how pharmaceutical companies, the traditional ones, might look to scale the cliff.
So first, from a macro environment point of view, Jim, I do believe that this whole pendulum that's swung in the direction of being risk averse is going to swing back again to the middle, because patients are going to be asking for new medicines.
Yeah.
There was a time in the mid-'80s when the patients were starting to ask for new medicines in the HIV area, and new medicines started to show up. And I think we're going to see at some point patients realizing that innovation does not come without risk, that you have to let new medicines come to the market so that patients can have access to the new medicines. So I think that thing will occur. And once that occurs, I do believe that the lawmakers in the U.S. are also going to work on strengthening and rejuvenating the FDA. The FDA needs more encouragement and more support so that it can move forward with this mission, which is not only to protect public health and safety, but also to encourage innovation. So I think that's going to happen. As far as individual companies are concerned, it is very important that the companies work hard on their core competencies, work hard on the core competency, especially of R&D. That is such an important area. It's important for CEOs to be close to that area and to try to see if the company can be differentiated in terms of being very good in R&D. Also in some other areas such as efficiency, being able to take out unnecessary work, that is also very important in our industry. Also, I think in our industry one can do some diversification. There is a lot of promise coming from personalized medicine, okay, which means that if you're looking at a new cancer therapy, you don't need to give everybody the same therapy. You look at those patients who will do best with that therapy and then give them that drug, and don't give other patients the same drug. There are advances occurring, and we need to see more of those in the future, because if one can be more focused with individualized medicine that is right for the individual, then one can reduce the failure rate in R&D, but also reduce the excessive costs in the healthcare system, because then only those patients who need the medicines will get those medicines.
And so personalized medicine, it sounds, it seems that's one of the benefits with more targeted R&D portfolios and more product lines that are coming out. But we've also seen a trend in the industry where we've had huge earnings and huge growth and huge focus on something called biotech products. And, I'm interested, biotech products, for those that don't know, aren't like the traditional, maybe some of the more traditional medicines that have been out in the past are becoming more important. The trend that I would maybe interested to ask your insights on is something called biosimilars. And biosimilars, maybe for the people listening to the podcast, what are biosimilars?
So biosimilars are maybe another word for biogenerics. although they're not exactly the same. In the area of small molecules, which are the classical pharmaceuticals, one can literally have exactly the same molecule because they are the same chemical. When it comes to biotechnology-based products, you're dealing with manufacturing via cell lines, and it's very hard to make exactly the same biotechnology generic as the original product. So the term biosimilar is used to show that the product is similar to the innovator, but is not exactly the same. And the big controversy that's occurring, that's really happening in the world of science right now is, at what point can you substitute a product which is similar but not the same with the innovator? In other words, have the new drug replace the innovator drug. That controversy is still not resolved. There are ways people are trying to accelerate the process of getting these biosimilars approved, but in the end, the science has to prevail. There are products on the market already which are biosimilars, such as growth hormones, but there are many other products which have still not received new approvals of biosimilars. So the innovators still have the whole market to themselves.
Okay. And so would you see, will we see a situation where some of the more traditional pharmaceutical companies might consider getting into the biosimilar market?
Very much so. A lot of the traditional pharmaceutical companies are looking at this area. And also partly because they know the science of manufacturing biotech products, and partly because they have the biotech manufacturing facilities to make these biosimilar products. The big discussion that's occurring inside big pharmaceutical companies is that is it worthwhile spending the money on clinical trials doing a biosimilar project, or is it better to spend the same money on clinical trials and do a bio-better project? In other words, have something that's better than the innovator, because biosimilar drugs still are going to be pretty expensive to develop, since you have to do clinicals to prove that they are safe and effective compared to the innovator. Quite different from the small molecule generics, where all you need to do are blood tests in most cases.
Okay. So we talked about, so there's a few different subjects that are going to be helping pharmaceutical companies deal with this patent cliff, help them scale the cliff. I mean, I have to ask one question. Here we are sitting on a video podcast talking. I'm in Dublin, Ireland. You're in New York City. The nature and way in which we communicate just seems to be fundamentally changed. And from my experience, the pharmaceutical industry might be a bit slow in adopting and embracing some of those technologies for obvious reasons, protections to the patients, regulatory reasons. Do you see the pharmaceutical industry embracing some of the new technology mediums in terms of interacting with patients and helping just the whole healthcare communication channels?
Pharmaceutical industry, by its very nature, tends to be more conservative than many other industries, partly because it's a large, sophisticated industry and they want to do a thorough job, but partly because it's a very regulated industry. It is surprising how little is still developed in terms of regulatory safe harbors when it comes to the new media. We're still very much in the old days still when it comes to the way we communicate with doctors, with patients. I think the pharmaceutical industry needs to continue its dialogue with the regulatory authorities so that we can have more freedom to operate in terms of communicating. And I think we can also reduce the costs. Just imagine the large amount of paper that is getting wasted right now because we're using old media to communicate with patients. And couldn't we do a better job using the new media? But I think it needs a proper dialogue with the authorities to make it happen. I also think that we need to open up the opportunity to communicate meaningful drug information to patients in many parts of the world where the authorities are preventing the patients from knowing about the new drugs. In that regard, the U.S. environment is a lot better.
Okay, excellent. So, and then with that, I mean, we're talking about new mediums. We're talking about it. Do you think CEOs should have a Facebook page? Should they be on LinkedIn in these traditional communications? Do you have a Facebook page?
I don't, but that doesn't mean that others should not have it. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Okay.
So.
Very good.